Hello and welcome back to ChäoS Head Noah. My name is Baby Dennis, and last time we started off the episode with Rimi going to the weird Nozomi lab place where Noah 2 was being held, as well as Nanami. And after trying to save Nanami, Nanami awakened to her own D-sword, and she seems to be very obsessed with the bangle that Takumi gave her, and she's just trying to get it back from whoever took it from her. And after a little bit, seems like Norose, the evil white-haired scientist dude, got Rimi to be like really depressed because he kept instilling like the memory of the time when she was an experiment and talked about spotlights and whatnot. And yeah, it seems like Rimi is compromised now. But most importantly, we go into the point of view of Takumi afterwards, where he's just trying to find another way to kill himself. And after listening to his bestest waifu, Saratan, he goes off to Shibuya, where he's met with like another entourage of people trying to, you know, expose him or see if he's like the new gen killer, news people, all those people, right? And then they get into a big like fight after thinking that Takumi is the new gen killer, and Takumi ends up getting confronted by Shogun, telling him to live because he is Takumi is his last piece in making sure that Nozomi gets taken down and Noah 2 doesn't happen. But after some back and forth, Takumi finds out the truth about Shogun and about Rimi, about how Rimi, you know, had some really bad experiences and Shogun got her out of that, how Shogun ended up creating Takumi and why Rimi wants to protect them both. And eventually he develops his D-sword after finding out that, yeah, he loves Rimi, so he wants to protect her despite being an delusion, sorry. And he awakens his D-sword and slices all those like robot otaku things that make the delusions. And he confronts the last one, who is Hazuki, who he finds out is the new gen killer. After probing into her memories and displaying them on TV, we find out that, oh gosh, she's done some really messed up shit, like cutting her own baby out of her own stomach and putting it in someone else. Very clear proof that she is the new gen killer. And after she essentially offs herself, everyone lauds him as like the new hero, but he's like, shut up guys, you guys don't tell me what to do, don't tell me what I am what I am, and you guys can't determine that for me. And then the earthquake happens. So yeah, that was a long recap because a lot of stuff happened last episode. But now it seems like we're back into like the dream or mind world. I'm not exactly sure who's talking. I want to say it's probably Rimi. We just started chapter 10. Don't know how much longer this is gonna last for, but let's start and see where this goes. I was standing on the water. The water was so clear, it was almost transparent. It was shallow. It only came up to my ankles. It didn't feel cold. I could hear the intermittent sounds of the waves. I was holding the handles of a wheelchair. Shogun, no, the real Takumi Nishijo, was right in front of me, wearing his knitted cap. He was sitting in his wheelchair, back slightly bent forward. There was nothing at all around us. You might expect to see a shell buried in the sand or a seagull soaring through the sky. There was nothing like that at all. There were no signs of life, only the blue sea and clear sky. The world was flat and level, as far as I could see, extending all the way to the horizon. This wasn't the real world. Yeah, he said he had about 2 years left, a year and a half ago, so his time is extremely limited. I could hear Shogun's voice mixed with the breaking waves. I couldn't see the look on his face from where I was standing. There was no real sorrow in his voice. There was no real emotion at all. It was reed thin, small, covered in wrinkles. All of his hair had fallen out. Oh yeah, he's growing old real fast. Early aging. It was a rare disease that affected 1 in around 8 million people. I remembered hearing about it. Oh, I didn't know that was a real thing. Oh, wow. And 1 in 8 million is a really small chance, but if you think about the number of people in the world, that's still like 1,000 people in the world probably, because our population is like more than 7 billion. So that's quite a lot of people when you think about it. I remember the terrible event I experienced around that age. Oh, That's why he didn't go. That's why his parents were so worried about him. Because he was actually sick. They didn't want him to go on the bus trip thing.
バス事故は君がそうかもしれない。あの時はまだ自分の力についてほとんど自覚はなかったけど。
He was probably thinking like it's not fair that other people get to go. I wish they would all die or something. And that probably ended up resulting in the accident. Because at that time he was still a child.
病が発症するよりずっと前。それこそ物心ついた時から僕はギガロマニアックスとしての力を使うことができた。
Okay, so we're in the point of view of Takumi, looking at Shogun.
それが普通のことだと思ってたよ。意識的にしろ、無意識的にしろ、僕はこれまで何度も力を使ってきた。
That is true. He did say that he would watch TV and predict like everything that showed up with that 100% accuracy.
だから僕の存在としての矛盾が大きくなりすぎちゃったんだ。青い背中から聞いてるだろ。
Oh, don't use it too
粒子と
much.
ともに追生成される反粒子はディソードにストックされていくんだ。反粒子は数学的に言えば過去へ向かうものだから。ストックすればするほどギガロマニアックスには現在の状態とのズレが発生し、やがてその矛盾により存在としての自己崩壊へ至る。
Shogun was unmoving in his wheelchair. What was he looking at? What could he see?
力を使えば使うほどこの病は進行しちゃうんだ。ギガロマニアックスの力で治せばいいじゃないか。
It's not that easy, man.
力を使えば病は進行する。端的に言えば力を使ってもプラスマイナスゼロっていうことさ。何も変わらない。どうして僕みたいな肝のヘタレ野郎を作ったの。もっと強くて行動的でかっこいいイケメンにすればよかったのに。
Could have made me cool, man.
人を一人、しかもギガロマニアックスの力を使える人間を生み出すのは簡単なことじゃなかった。君を生み出したって1年近く昏睡しちゃったくらいだよ。僕は未完成だったってわけ。
No, you were complete, I think he's gonna say.
君はとても人間らしい。
Oh, never mind.
しなくてもいい。本心だよ。
I sighed. I really did hate this guy.
リミにはいつも力を使うなって怒られたよ。彼女は君を助けたいでしょう。でも僕はリミの忠告に従うわけにはいかない。今の危機的状況は僕の IR2 がきっかけなんだから。
IR2, the strange scribblings on the back of the essay.
IR2 はある科学者の手に止まり、やがてのぞみテクノロジー社によって研究が始められた。
That was Genichi Narose.
それがプロジェクトノア。言ってみれば人工的にギガロマニアックスの能力を発生させる装置。僕が計画に気づくことができたのはリミと出会ったからなんだ。彼女がひどい拷問を受けていたのはそのプロジェクトの一環だった。ノアのシステムを効率化するために必要だったのがコード3。ギガロマニアックスが力を使う過程で放出する特殊なノウハウのこと。それを手に入れるためにのぞみの社長ノーズはリミに過酷な拷問を加えた。
That's the dude. So that's the president of Nozomi? I thought he... Oh, wait. No. I thought he was someone who was lower in Nozomi, like a scientist, but like one of the top scientists. I didn't realize he was the president. Because when he was in that console room, it sounded like he had a lot of leverage, but not all the power, you know?
強烈な負の感情を抱くとき、ギガのマニアックスは力に覚醒し、理想度を獲得するからね。
Once again, I remembered what Senna said.
バイオリズムの上昇によって中脳変影系ニューロンのドーパミンが過剰分泌されたとき、理想度は現れる。それは危機的な状況や興奮、悲しみ、憎しみ、笑いなど人それぞれだ。ドーパミン分泌量が多ければそれだけ観測しやすくなる。
君が僕にちょっかいをかけてきたのもそのため。
君を覚醒させるためにだ。
Oh, he was trying to multiply the stress that he had, so he would be more delusional and awaken his D sword. Oh, wait, so that was all part of his plan.
ごめん。
So he was gaslighting him. And honestly, he didn't do much work. Most of it was Takumi in his own mind, but he made him that way. It wasn't just me and Rimi. Other people have been physically and psychologically tortured as a part of Project Noah as well, to awaken them as gigalomaniacs. Ase, Senna too, Kozupi, even Nanami. They've all been made to suffer.
IR2 から生み出されたノア2は、僕が自分の手で止めなくちゃならない。でも僕はこんな体だ。満足に動くこともできない。それに、僕のコードサンプルを欲しがる望みから狙われるようにもなっちゃう。
Oh, so he made it so that he didn't exist. The fact that I was staying at General Hospital made matters even worse. It had a secret connections to the Nozomi group.
だから、身を隠さなくちゃいけなかった。
幻の病室のアミーちゃんか。
あそこに入ってこられたのはリミだけだったよ。僕は身動きが取れなくなって、それで
僕を作ったのか。
Shogun nodded slightly.
リミには君を消すように何度も言われたんだ。命を削る行為だからやめろって。でも僕に残された命は長くない。力を使わなくたってあまり差はないんだよね。
So, does Takumi having a D sword now make it so that he might be able to keep himself alive? He can keep his own delusion alive? His voice was so very calm. Maybe it was the calm of someone who was given a death sentence years ago.
それに君が覚醒して力を使えるようになれば僕の命は持たないだろうか。
僕と君は一心同体っていうこと。
そうだね。
でも一つだけ約束。もう妄想はしない。ね。
No promises.
タクの妄想力はとっても強いから。妄想をすればするほど本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
Oh, by his real self, she meant Shogun. If I kept my promise to Rimi, I wouldn't be able to go save her. Even if I tried, I'd be helpless to do anything.
君の命はあとどれぐらい持つ？
きっと今日か明日までじゃないかな。
そこまで。
I was stunned. It was far less than I expected.
僕が覚醒しちゃったから。
気にしなくていいよ。君の覚醒は僕にとって本望だから。
君が死んだら僕はどうなる？
君は僕と一心同体であると同時にリアルブートされたことによって現実の人間になった。生まれ方は特殊かもしれないけど君は人間だよ。
Ah, finally, the person Takumi was afraid of the most accepted that he's human. After all that looking for validation he got from The person he least expected to give it to him.
僕が消えれば君は助かるの。
無駄だよ。せいぜい寿命が数日から数週間伸びるぐらいじゃないかな。でもそんな愚かな選択肢を選ぶのはやめるんだ。君にはノア2を破壊してほしい。そのために力を使うことを遠慮しないでほしい。
言われなくても分かってる。君に遠慮するほど僕はお人よしじゃない。
Nah, you are a softie, though probably in the worst way possible. Shogun laughed. His shoulders shook. Just a little. I didn't mean to make him laugh, so it made me mad.
君が目覚めてくれてよかった。勝手な話で迷惑かもしれないけど、あと君に託す。
Suddenly, the feeling of the handles of the wheelchair disappeared from my hand. His wheelchair had moved away from me and was gliding across the water. The wheels were slicing through the surface, creating little waves. I had no intention of following him. I just watched him go.
僕の役目は終わった。
Goodbye, Shogun.
勝手だね。僕に丸投げ。
少し疲れちゃった。眠らせてよ。
He turned his wheelchair back around to face me. Like always, I couldn't read his expression, but there was a tension in his voice.
時間がない。急いで。ノロスはノア2を本格的に稼働させた。こうなったらノア2を直接破壊するしかないんだ。頼んだよ。
Alright, we're leaving the mind world, the dream world. And then he disappeared, like he'd vanished into a fog. The colors of the mental world began to slowly fade.
君に頼まれる筋合いなんてない。僕自身が決めたことをやるだけ。
The sound of the waves got further and further away. I took a good long look at the endless blue sky to burn it into my memory like Rimi had once done. And then I softly closed my eyes. And wake up to find that holy crap, Shibuya's destroyed. Yep. The serious sounding voice of a newscaster was coming from the radio. Ew, that's pretty bad. Damn, expected to reach over 30,000? They created a massacre just for an experiment. What the hell? There was a crackle of static before the voice on the radio vanished entirely.
ダメだわ。また聞こえなくなった。
Oh, we see her. Momose picked up the old portable radio, shook it, and then smacked it a few times before letting out a big sigh. Well, I'm glad she's alright.
古いから使い物にならないわね。
Oh! Oh, you and Ayase are here too. Yes, the warriors of Gladio, the knights. She let out a forced smile and looked to the side. Next to her was a tired-looking Ayase Kishimoto and Yua Kusunoki. Both Ayase and Yua's clothes were covered in dirt, and it was obvious how difficult it must have been for them to get this far. But the weapons in their hand, the D-swords, didn't have a speck of dust on them. Their cold light was bright as ever. After the earthquake, Yua and Ayase had walked from Yoyogi to Shibuya, then headed to Friezia's office to meet with Momose. Oh, okay, so I thought we were in the point of view of Takumi, but maybe we're just in the point of view of, or narrating this group of people. The three of them had waited at a spot near the office, whose building had tilted badly during the earthquake, and now seemed in danger of falling over, hoping that Bond would show up. But even by the time morning came, there was no sign of him. Momose had suggested leaving Shibuya, but Ayase rejected the idea.
グラジオール目覚めたの。早く他の黒騎士と合流しないと。
Then she tried to drag Yua out into the rubble of central Shibuya. Lacking any better options, Momose and Yua had come with her. Just goddamn this goddamn novel enthusiast. It was 7 in the morning. The sun hadn't even been up for an hour yet. There was no sign whatsoever of a crisp morning air. Nightfall had hidden the full extent of yesterday's disaster, but now the dawn's light was beginning to expose it. They were in the middle of it. Shibuya was a scene from a nightmare. Huge cracks had appeared in the roads, and their asphalt had bulged up from beneath the ground. Several buildings had fallen over, burying the streets around them in rubble. Most of the glass had shattered, and the huge billboards on the roof had fallen off the sides. There were dead bodies lying everywhere, exposed to the elements. At first, Momose would feel terrible every time she saw one, then give a silent prayer for them in her heart. But there were so many that she soon had to force herself not to think about them. If she did, it would break her. Once in a while, she passed by someone else. They were all expressionless and seemed to be slowly wandering the city with no destination in mind. Several men were working together to save some of the people trapped by the rubble, but without any heavy equipment, it was a hopeless cause. Momose turned to look at the thing in Yua's hand. A D-sword. Asai had explained what it was to her, a sword which could create things from nothing, as if by magic. What Bon had said was true. Yua seemed surprised and confused that she herself had one of these swords.
ねえ岸本さん
Asai was walking ahead of her and didn't even turn around when Momose spoke. There was a tense nervousness on her face.
このディソードを持つ人はあなたたちを含めて全部で7人いるっていうこと
Okay, let's count. Okay, so there's Takumi, Rimi, Ayase, Yua, Senna, Kozupi, and Nanmi. Yep, that's 7.
そうよ。
他の人たちがどこにいるのかわかるの
わからない。
Wakaranai.
だったら
感じるのよ。意志を。こっちで間違いないわ。
Ayase was no help. I mean, she could be helped, just follow her. Mose sighed and repeated the same thing she'd been saying all morning.
今むやみに歩き回るのは危ないわひとまず安全なところに避難するべきよ
ダメよ。時間がないの。
もしかしたら他の黒櫛だったかしらその人たちだって避難場所にいるかもしれないでしょ
そうですよ岸本さん私も避難場所に行くべきだと
Perhaps Yo was more persuasive than Momose had been, because Ayase suddenly stopped. Her eyes narrowed. She was staring down at a street in Dogenzaka Hill, which was now completely impassable to cars.
いた。
Dogenzaka, that's near Shibuya, I believe. Oh, Nanami's here! Holy shit! Ayase was staring at a girl who was coming from the direction of the station. She was wearing a Suime uniform, but her clothes were more of a mess than Yua's or Ayase's. She was holding a huge cross-shaped sword up to her chest with just her left hand. Her steps were unsteady, as if she might fall over at any moment.
大変
You gotta give her a hand. Okay, I've made that joke way too many times. Momose ran towards the girl, Nanami Nishijo, her plump body shaking with each step. She was concerned about the D-sword in Nanami's hand, but for now, she was more concerned about helping her. She grabbed her tiny body and helped her stay upright.
大丈夫よく頑張ったわね今病院に連れて行ってあげるから気をしっかり持つのよ
Nanami just looked at her with her vacant eyes.
なんて言ったの
7のパングルどこ
Yua and Ayase ran up to her as well, just a moment after Momose.
この子西条くんの妹さんです
そう。黒騎士の資格があるのもうなずけるわ。匠の妹ね。
二人ともこの子を運ぶのを手伝ってなんとか病院に連れて行かないと
Real Buddha hand for her. Come on, do something. Give her a bangle.
痛い
Nanami moaned in pain.
右手
Momose took a quick glance down at her hand, only to gasp in shock.
だってひどいこんな
Yua and Ayase couldn't understand why Momose was so shocked. Nanami's hand was wrapped in a bloody bandage, but it didn't look that badly injured. But to Momose's eyes, her arms ended in a bloody stump at the end of the wrist. It had been sewn up, but the wound had opened. Ase tried to grab hold of Nanami's right hand and the fingers, a blank expression on her face, but the hand passed through empty air. Her fingers were like a hologram, visible but without any substance. Blood dripped from the red bandage and fell onto Ayase's hand.
もうそう。
リミさんに助けてもらって。リミさんって崎畑リミさん？
知ってるの？
ええ、西条くんのお友達の。
Yua had thought that Takumi was a new gen killer and had spent a lot of time investigating him and his surroundings. Of course, that included the person he spoke with most of the time, like Nanami Nishijo and Rimi Sakihata. Ase's expression darkened just slightly when she heard Rimi's name.
崎畑リミの7人の黒騎士の一人。
And I slapped the shit out of her.
そうなんですか
Ase remembered what had happened at the hospital yesterday. She remembered the sadness in Rimi's voice.
岸本さん。タクに近づかないで。目覚めさせたくないの。
君には自覚がないの。黒騎士の一人としての。
私が一人で何とかするから。
Oh. Okay, so honestly I thought that Rimi was telling the truth about telling her to show her sword because that was information that Takumi was interested in and it wouldn't make sense for her to ask that otherwise. But I guess this was the actual conversation.
とても美しいわ、その思いは。でもそれは、大いなる意志の望むことじゃない。私も、望んでいないわ。あなた一人に全てを背負わせるなんて。
黒騎士云々の話は今は置いときましょう。とにかく早く病院に連れて行かないと血が止まらないわ。
Mose put her handkerchief up against Nanami's swoons.
すごい熱だし顔色も悪い。急がないと。
お兄に会いたいよ。
A single tear dripped from her empty eyes. And just after that, it happened without warning. Oh, jeez. The street they were standing on collapsed. The ground fell out from underneath them, and they began to fall. It was like they were falling into the darkness of an endless abyss. Mose screamed in a voice that sounded much too afraid and immature for someone her age. She was saying, like, we should get out of here, guys! This place is gonna collapse, please! Okay, that's Takumi. I looked up and saw a thick layer of clouds. At some point, the night had ended. There was no sign of a blue sky. The sky was depressing, dull, dark, and gray. In a distance, I could hear ear-splitting sounds of ambulance and fire engine sirens. I could see helicopters circling in the sky above. There were so many, like flies. My head ached. It was like there was a road construction crew working overtime inside my skull, and the pain was even worse than it had been during the last earthquake. I tried to remember what had happened just before my memories went blank. The white sky. What Shogun had called the third melt. I sat up, trying to ignore the pain from my headache, and was shocked by what I saw. I think this is the same thing that we saw in the beginning of the game. The city I knew was gone. It was like one of those post-apocalyptic movies that had been popular a decade ago. Shibuya had been destroyed. The traffic signals, the roadside trees, even some of the buildings had fallen over. The famous televisions above Scramble Crossing were cracked and silent. The roofs above the entrance to the subway had collapsed, burying them. The bridges where the Yamanote line had ran had collapsed, leaving the severed rails jutting out into space. There were people lying everywhere. Blood and scraps of flesh clung to the rubble. People who weren't moving, people moaning in pain, people screaming, "Help me!" People covered in dust and dirt, crawling on the ground, deathly pale. People crying as they held an unmoving body in their hands. The smell of blood, the stench of something burning, the smell of dust in the air. I could see pillars of smoke rising in the distance. So, this was the power of Noah 2. I felt a wave of terror wash over me. It was a weapon of mass destruction. Ooh, yeah. I finally understood why Shogun was so desperate to stop it. Wait, where is Shogun? I came back to my senses to look around me. I could see a badly bent wheelchair right next to me. His tiny body was lying next to it. I ran over to him and held him in my arms. I yelled at him, but there was no answer. I couldn't hear the voice of his mind either. Was he dead? I put my ear up to his mouth. His breathing was faint, but he was breathing. He was just passed out. I tried giving him a light slap on the cheek, but he didn't wake up. Yeah, that would have been a very helpful information to tell us. I was gonna say that. It's like, I want you to stop Noah too. It's like, okay, where'd I go? Unless I knew that, I couldn't even go save Rimi and Nanami. I should have asked Shogun to tell me earlier. I took my phone out from my pocket, but the battery was dead, and nothing I could do could make it turn on. It was useless now. Was there anybody besides Shogun that would know? Think. I guess Senna. There's no time to waste. That Neurosis guy might decide to kill Rimi at any minute. Who? Who else was out there who knew about Noah too, and who could help me? Oh wait, the homeless dude would know too. Yeah!
君たちは特別な存在だ。中でも一番特別なのは、その目、誰の目を産み落とした少年。
畑野一世。
Senna's father, one of the original members of Project Noah's research team, and now he was missing. I never met him. No, I might have just missed him a few times. According to Kozupi, he was wandering around Shibuya dressed as a homeless person. Oh, I guess it's not going to be hard to find a homeless person because now there are a lot of people who are homeless because their homes are now destroyed. I picked up Shogun's body and carried him around on my back. As I started to walk through the rubble, he was shockingly light. I had no idea where Hatano could be. I'd have to look for him. Oh man, this is a mess. This place looks a little bit better than the other places. Shockingly light or not, though, Shogun's body still weighed around 20 kilograms. And oh jeez, that's really light for a 17-year-old. Holy crap! 20 kilograms? That's less than 50 pounds. I didn't have the strength to carry him around Shibuya, not with rubble and destroyed roads. I never done any real exercise in my life, after all. All I ever did was sit in front of the PC. I thought about taking Shogun to a hospital, but with the way things were in Shibuya now, I couldn't call an ambulance. I ran out of strength halfway up one of these less steep hills in Dogenzaka. Oh, Dogenzaka! They were just there. I was out of breath and my body was pouring with sweat. I wiped my sweat from my brow and stopped to catch my breath. Oh! What are you doing singing? And then I could hear a faint voice. The voice was singing. It was sad, but not in despair. It was pleasant to the ears. I'd heard the voice somewhere before. It was on stage at a concert hall. Last time it had been accompanied by violent flashings of lights that shocked the eyes, and earth-shakingly loud noises. But now, it was in an empty road with no one around, in a collapsed city where death now ruled. I put Shogun down and looked around me, but the only thing I could see were a few corpses. I looked around for Ayase, trying my best not to stare at the bodies. Where was her voice coming from? The ground! Look down! I could see a collapsed street in front of me. There was a huge hole opened up in the ground. If I remembered right, the subway ran under the street. Oh, and then he would see Nanami as well. I've been waiting for them to reunite. It didn't seem possible for her to just be down there, but I looked over the edge just to see. It was around 5 meters deep. There were small piles of rubble everywhere. Ayase was lying there. I leapt down into the hole. I screwed up the landing and fell face first into a pile of rubble. Ooh, that's pain. Oh, here's Ayase without her D-sword, huh? Ayase's leg was pinned by a large lump of concrete. Oh, it actually... No, okay, wait. It is, yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if her leg was bent, but like it's actually bent in under the rock. It's hard to tell from the shading here. And she couldn't move. I tried to get it off her, but it was too heavy for even me to budge it by myself.
私だけじゃない。他に3人いるわ。君の妹も。
ナナミが。
Why was she here? Didn't that Norose guy have her?
ナナミナナミ
I ignored the pain I was feeling and forced myself to stand up. I shouted her name, but there was no reply. I looked around and saw one other woman besides Ayase, a portly woman laying face down on the ground. She wasn't moving, but I also couldn't see any injuries. She was probably just passed out. I couldn't see Nanami or the other person. Maybe they'd just been buried alive. Oh god, I forgot. I wonder if he's still scared of Yua, because his entire theory about Yua and Shogun are just, wrong, and now he knows. I need to do something fast. I glanced up at the hole above me. There was so much dust that it felt like I was going to start coughing just looking at it. Beyond it, I could see the sky. I thought of Shogun, who I left lying on the ground. I remember what Rimi had said.
妄想をすればするほど、本物のあなたの命が削られていっちゃうんだ。
We can solve this with more delusions. But there was no time to waste. I pulled out my D-sword from the invisible space. I sat down next to Ayase and looked at her face, making sure to keep her leg out of my field of vision. I stared into her eyes. That was enough.
妄想するんだ。
Make it strong. Make it real.
綾瀬の足の上にある瓦礫は大きなものじゃない。数は多いけど、一つ一つは小さい。重くない。簡単に足を引っ張り出せる。他の二人も
I can save the others
助
too.
け出せる。
Me and Ayase, if I created a shared awareness between the two Gigomaniacs, it's bound to become real. Your leg was never underneath that rock. Ayase smiled in relief. Her fingers gently stroked my cheek.
グラジオールの導きも。君がここに来てくれたの。
I blinked and looked up, trembling. The huge block of concrete that was just crushing her leg had turned into a bunch of tiny chunks, just like in my delusion. I moved a few of them aside and she was free. I hadn't for a moment thought that it would work this well. She sat up and rubbed her ankle. Fortunately, she didn't seem to be badly injured.
綾瀬の歌が聞こえたんだ。それに導かれたんだよ。
そう。よかった。歌い続けてきた。
I lent Ayase a hand to help her to her feet and looked around us.
ナナミは
I still can see my sister. Had the delusion failed, or was she already... I started to get worried. Don't delude yourself about that. I heard a voice. I looked in the direction it was coming from. I saw a hand poking out from the rubble. I grabbed the hand by the fingers and looked through the gaps in the rubble. It was Yua!
Oh.
The gap from the small tunnel, at the end of it was a girl in the glasses. I recognized her. Damn, her glasses survived the impact? It felt like it had been a long time since I'd seen Yua.
なぜか急にこの隙間ができて、ついさっきまで全く身動きが取れなかったんですけど。
She looked away, sounding slightly apologetic.
手をしっかり掴んでて。
It's time to bury her. No, I'm just kidding. I gripped her hand harder, and then I yanked as hard as I could to pull her out of the rubble. Ayase helped too. Together, we were able to pull her out without too much trouble at all.
ありがとう。香水。
Her whole body was covered in dust. There were tiny chunks of concrete clinging onto her hair. But she didn't seem to be hurt. Now all that was left was Nanami. I left Yua to Ayase and went in to search for her. If Ayase was able to escape that easily, then my delusions had probably worked. And if that was the case, then I might be able to pull her out from a gap, like I had with Yua. Just like I thought, after looking under a few piles of rubble, I was able to find her.
Nanami!
I called, but she didn't answer. She seemed to be unconscious. I reached out a hand to touch her, but then hesitated. No, you gotta do it! You gotta do it! Do it! You'll find out if it's fake afterwards. I remembered how she suddenly disappeared when I touched her yesterday. No, this Nanami was real. She had to be. I reached out and grabbed her shoulder, or rather, her blouse. I could just touch her fine. I could feel her warmth. I pulled her out as hard as I could, just like I had done with Yua. Unlike the other girls, Nanami's clothes were covered in blood. Her arm in particular was bright red. I laid her face up on the ground to check her breathing. Her breathing was pained, and barely there, but she was breathing.
よかった。
Now I was worried about her bloodstained right hand. I went to grasp it to take a look, and my fingers slipped right through it. A delusion? So Nanami's right hand was...
ごめん。ごめん。巻き込んで。
Nanami let out a soft moan. Her face was covered in dust. I put a hand up to her cheek and softly ran my hand along it. Her eyes opened just a little. Her gaze wandered around the room for a sec. What room? Before she saw me.
ナナミ。
Suddenly, her face twisted in sadness. Tears came pouring down from her eyes. She gripped my hand tightly with her left hand. She pleaded with me in a whisper, but I just shook my head a little.
ナナミの本当のお兄は僕じゃないよ。
Oh, that's how he's gonna drop it. Wow. Whoa, what's this? Her memories are all messed up. That's how it seemed to Nanami Nishijo. Okay. Her brother's words triggered something in her. It suddenly felt like she had two brothers. No, it didn't feel like she had two brothers. She had two brothers. She could see both of their faces. One wimpy and helpless looking, one covered in wrinkles. But she was also sure that she only had a single brother. There was a gap, and it was getting bigger. A gap between her memories and what she knew. What was real? What wasn't? She didn't know, and it scared her. She tried to empty out her mind. And suddenly, her own words came back to her, like a rippling on the water. Okay, so she was not conspirating. Her memories were just really messed up. Maybe manipulated by Shogun, actually, because she knew that Shogun was her brother when Rimi came to visit, which was 2 years ago. Or no, a year and a half ago, I believe. So, yeah. So, either Rimi or Shogun probably did something to her memories. I have to be the big sister now. Oh! Oh, she has casual clothes. Suddenly, she was standing in a hallway at dusk. The pungent smell of disinfectant hung in her nose. There was a plain, unadorned door in front of her. She was holding its handle, and then, without any conscious intent on her part, her hand opened the door. It's the room with the drawing book.
お兄、またご飯食べないつもり？ちゃんと食べてっていつも言ってるじゃん。出ないと元気になんないよ。あ、もしかしてグリーンピースが入ってるから？子供じゃないんだし、いい加減好き嫌いやめたら？
Wait, is this the memory that we saw before where she was in a hospital with Takumi? Although it was in Takumi's POV, he must have had memories of this despite, never actually experiencing it. So this was part of Shogun's memory left behind. And, yeah.
そりゃ、ナナだってグリーンピース嫌いだから残したくなる気持ちはわかるけど、ちゃんと食べてくんないとナナが怒られるんだからね。あの怖い看護師長さんに。
ナナミ。
Yeah, don't worry. If I throw it in the trash, will they notice? I hope not.
何？
今まで辛く当たってごめん。
ん？お兄が謝るなんて珍しいじゃん。
もう僕のために無理をする必要はないんだ。
Ah, so Shogun who did it. She changed her memories to think that Takumi was her brother.
何言ってるの？
僕は身を隠さなくちゃならなくなった。だからお前はもうここには来なくていい。何のつもり？さようなら。
Oh man, that's actually kind of sad. Oh, how's she gonna react to this? Her memories ended there. The fact that she had an older brother, a real one. The fact that he was badly ill and that she spent years taking care of him. The fact that she'd always tried to have her act together to be strong. All those things had vanished from her memories for the past year and a half. The memories had been hidden from her. And in their place were other memories. Her brother was healthy and lived alone in Shibuya. Her mom had asked her to check up on him every once in a while, so she'd go to his place after school. This had been their habit for a long time. It was normal in her family. She never doubted these memories.
どうしてナナは忘れちゃってたんだろう。
30 minutes after she was rescued from being buried alive, Naomi was finally reunited with her real brother. He was lying on the road. He was breathing, but unconscious. His body was small, thin, covered in wrinkles. He looked so weak. It was a brother she'd always known.
こんなのひどいよ。
Oh man. This is actually really sad. Especially now that she's also lost an arm.
ナナはお兄に文句ばっかり言ってたけど
She was weeping as she clung to his tiny body.
お兄のこと一度だって忘れたいなんて思ったことなかったのに勝手だよ。わがまますぎだよ。
She heard a metallic clinking sound coming from his clothing. Something fell out of his breast pocket. Oh, it's gonna be the bangle. It was what she'd sought after for so long. It's what she'd lost when they'd taken her right hand. A cheap bangle with a snowflake design. She stared at his face, confused, but his wrinkled eyes stayed shut. She picked up the bangle with her left hand. It just felt like she remembered. The bangle was the first present her brother had given her. It was her treasure. She looked up, her eyes unconsciously searching for her other brother. He had his back turned to her and held a long sword in his hand. He was walking away. He was going to leave. Nanami's intuition told her this clearly. He was going to leave without saying anything to her. The thought made her sad.
行っておいで。
Nanami squinted and looked around.
今声が
It was her brother's voice as she remembered it. It was speaking directly into her mind, coming from his unconscious body.
彼は僕と一心同体。もう一人のお兄なんだから。
Ah, so that's how they're gonna handle this. Make it so that they're both her brother. So that she doesn't feel as conflicted as she could be. Whether it was her brother's voice or just her own imaginations, Nanami couldn't tell, but either way,
わかった。
she whispered to her brother as she laid on the ground. Oh wow, she's... Oh man, this kind of hurt. Then she stood up and walked towards her other brother. She could barely walk. She spent days in the dark room, pinned to some bizarre object, forced to endure terrible pain. She didn't remember how many times she thought about dying. Her right hand especially had a constant pain, like someone had torn clean through the bone with a huge saw, because that's probably what actually happened. It felt like there was no hand there, but when she looked, she could see one. The confused sensation were driving her insane. Mentally and physically, she was exhausted. If she wasn't careful, she might collapse here, unable to take another step. That's why it took all of her strength and effort to even stretch out her hand. But she wanted to stop him from going, no matter how hard it was for her to do so.
待って。
She just barely squeezed out the word, but he heard it. He stopped and turned back to her. Oh my god. I feel so bad for her because, honestly, I feel like Nanami is one of the few characters that hadn't done anything wrong. She's just a victim through and through. She succeeded in keeping him from leaving, but now she wasn't sure what to say. The reality was that this boy wasn't her brother, but her mind kept telling her he was. The two feelings got mixed together in her head, and she couldn't separate them. But the bangle she held in her left hand, it felt cold to the touch, but the fact that it was a present from him warmed her heart. It connected the two of them. That's how it felt to her. He was like, "There's just some extra I bought at the shop, don't worry about it." That was enough of an answer for her.
お兄は本当のお兄じゃないかもしれないけど、 頼りにならなくて、おたくさんで、アニメキャラもお人形さんばっかり集めてて、口が悪くて、愛想もなくて、意地悪なことばっかり言うけど、お兄もナナのお兄だよ。
She held back her tears and smiled the best that she could.
ありがとう、ナナミ。
Her other brother gave her a shy smile, and then, relieved, she slowly began to pass out. Nanami staggered like she was about to fall. I quickly ran over to grab her. So, can you literally give her a hand since your real booting powers are really strong? She was unconscious. Her face was pale. Her breathing was labored.
早く病院に運ばないと。
Oh, you're
こ
up.
のままじゃ
Cool.
危ないわ。
The large woman who had said her name was Momose spoke sternly as she looked at Nanami's face. Then she turned to look at Shogun.
そっちに寝かせてる子もね。
I gave Nanami to Momose.
二人を頼みます。
あなたはどうするの？
探さなくちゃいけない人がいて。
I needed the location of Noah too. I asked Nanami, but she wasn't sure where they had been holding her. My one chance was to find the man named Hatano.
必要なことなのね。グラジオールを倒すために。
グラジオールか。
Yeah, let's just call it that. If what she meant was Noah too...
うん、
Yeah.
そうだよ。
Ayase's expressions tensed. She took a step forward. She was dragging her foot a little. Maybe she'd been hurt after all.
一緒に行くわ。私も。
その必要はないよ。
Ayase just shook her head.
基地に集まらないと。
綾瀬も、それに、岩も、畑野っていう人を探してほしい。
Yua was standing behind Moase. When I said her name, I could see her twitch nervously.
その人が、ノア2の場所、知ってるから。
Oh, what's that? I only know Gladio.
だから、
Oh, crap, I skipped by accident.
一緒に行動しなくても、僕は、みんなの見聞きしたことがわかる。
The new power. It's very useful.
今は手分けして探して。
Right now, that was the best option we had. We had to hurry. If another earthquake hit, there was no guarantee I'd survive.
わかった。
Damn, I wanted a more active role. Ugh! Ase spoke, looking disappointed.
なんだかよくわからないけど、
Sure, okay, yeah.
野呂瀬源一が、すべての黒幕です。
そういうこと。
Oh, that's a name she
それなら
recognizes.
妹さんたちのことは私に任せなさいな。
She puffed her chest out, and then she nodded, as if trying to give me courage.
ただし、無茶しちゃダメよ。
How does she know Norase Genichi? Maybe it's just because she noticed that Nozumi is being very sus, and he's the CEO, or president of Nozumi?
それと一つ頼まれてほしいんだけど、バンちゃん、ヘラヘラ笑ってるうさんくさそうな中年刑事を見たら、私に連絡するように伝えてくれる？
Oh no, I forgot. Now that he's like omnipresent and he knows everything that's happened, he knows that he's dead. Was she talking about Yasuji Ban? I knew he was dead. His partner had shot and killed him. I'd seen it happen while unconscious. I tried to tell Momose that, but...
まったく、あの人はこんな時にどこをほっつき歩いてるんだか。まあ、案外どこかで怪我人を助けてるのかもしれないけどね。
Honestly, in this kind of situation, I know it's really hard for him, and I don't know what I'd do, but I kind of hope that he tells her. But when I heard her say that, I just couldn't tell her. Damn it.
というわけでよろしく。
はい。
I nodded. It was a promise that I knew I could never keep. But I couldn't think of any other way to answer her.
西条くん。
Yua's voice was barely audible, and she wasn't looking me in the eye. For the past few minutes, she'd been glancing over at me, waiting for a chance to speak.
あなたのこと疑って ごめんなさい。
Well, you weren't wrong when you said I was Shogun.
私、西条くん、傷つけるようなこと言って。
The lens in her glasses were covered with dust, but even if I couldn't see her eyes, I could tell that she was crying.
謝っても許してもらえるとは思ってないです。それでも謝らせてください。ごめんなさい。
She bowed deeply. I just turned my back to her without answering.
僕のベースにあるセイラのフィギュア、
はい。
よかったらもらってくれる？
It had been a huge shock when I found out that she lied to me, but now I knew what she had been going through. But still, it felt like saying I'd forgiven her would just be arrogant. Oh right, he can. I keep forgetting. So now he's also omniscient. Not omniscient because he doesn't know where Genichi Norose was, but he knows everything that's happened that we've experienced because I guess we are the eyes of God, looking at because we can see the game from Shogun's perspective up until this point. So yeah, he knows everything that we, the player, have seen. I'd always thought of her as my enemy. I wasn't entitled to an apology. I didn't have the right to forgive her.
いいんですか？
もらってほしい。
はい。また一緒にフィギュア買いに行きましょうね。
Aww. It's been so long since we've seen her smile. She's always been in Terminator stalking mode. She finally gave me the kind smile I'd seen when we first met. I nodded. And then glanced over at Ayase and Momose too. And finally I took one long look at Nanami and Shogun. Then I started to walk alone through the pile of rubble. I'll walk the lonely road, Okay, so the Nanami thing got resolved. So the only things left are mainly Hatano Issei along with like Senna and Kozupi's dilemma. The actual Genichi Norose, who's probably the final boss, and Suwa. So those 3 points. Shinsen Station was one station away from Shibuya on the Inokashira line, but by train it only took a minute to get there. The station itself was covered by a tunnel, and the only light from outside came from the entrance at the end of the platform. Because of the earthquake, all the lights were off, and it was far darker than usual. Oh, finally! They're here! Everyone's here! Aoi Senna stepped inside, supporting the body of Kozue Horihara as she walked. There was no need to buy a ticket. There weren't any station attendants around, and the tickets machines weren't working either. I mean, I don't think the subways are working now. She looked over at the rails and saw that they were badly bent. Of course, the trains hadn't been running since yesterday. Kozue's left leg was covered in blood. She cut it badly on the glass during the earthquake. Senna had tried to stop the bleeding with a towel, but the cut turned out to be deeper than she thought. Kozue was going to need real medical attention. Gigalomaniac powers couldn't heal injuries. Oh, okay. The pain made your brain realize the injury was real, whether you wanted to or not. You couldn't create a shared awareness that the injury didn't exist. You couldn't make it so that it never happened. Your human instincts wouldn't let you. Kozue said telepathically, looking like she was about to cry. But Senna said nothing. She comes straight here to Shinsen Station on foot. When she reached the empty platform, she suddenly let go of Kozue. With one leg too weak to move, Kozue dropped to the ground. Senna paid no attention to Kozue, who was looking up at her in confusion. She was staring at a single point in the platform, teeth gnashing in rage. It's him. She was staring at a figure sitting on the far end of the platform. It's your daddy, Nora! A homeless man dressed in filthy rags, yet a sign reading, "The minds of men will perish." Oh, it used to be like the world is going to end. Senna begins to slowly walk towards the man. Her voice was ice cold.
負を生へと変換できる者たちへの遺言だよ、セナ。
The homeless man Hatano spoke her name coldly without even looking up at her. Okay, so he's not completely out of it. He recognizes her.
お前に慣れ慣れしく名前を呼ばれたくない。この半年ずっと考えてきた。お前をどうやって殺すか。
ありがとう。
どうして礼を言う。
How nice of you to think of me.
利己的な理由だよ。お前に殺されることが私にとって最善の贖罪かもしれない。そう思ったからだ。
それなら話は早い。
Wait, we need the information first. Senna Rio booted her D-sword. She decided the method that she'd kill her father. She'd kill him with a D-sword. It was simple, which meant that it was the closest to the truth. How she killed him didn't matter. What mattered was that she killed him.
すまない。
He still wasn't looking up at her.
どうして謝る。
お前に父殺しの汚名を着せてしまうからだ。
殺せさえすればどんな恥ずかしめだって受けてやる。お前は母さんと妹を殺した。
事実だ。
しかもあんなむごい最後。
Oh man. Hatano Issei, he really does have the face of a man who just fucked up and could never forgive himself for it. He looks like he wants to die. So he's just like, yeah, I imagine this is kind of like how Takumi was. He's just so listless and he's just like, oh my god, this, I can't. Senna's voice had been completely devoid of emotion, but now it was starting to waver, just a little.
お前には見せたくはなかった。いや、今のは聞き流してくれ。
なぜあんなことを。
過程を説明することは無意味だよ。お前は納得しないし、結果が改変されるわけでもない。
Senna lowered the D-sword towards Hatano's head.
そうやってまた逃げるのか。
間違っていたのは私だ。それが全てなんだ。
お前には失望した。
まだ期待していたのか。何を。人を含めて世界は全て電気仕掛け。そう言ったのはお前だ、セナ。
Senna's shoulders were shaking. For almost 3 years, ever since Hatano had begun the Mana project, the two of them had barely seen each other, and yet he'd seen through her almost instantly. Something felt wrong, but the uncertainty in her heart turned into raging anger that threatened to make her lose control.
セナ、惑わされるな。電気仕掛けならば、お前のその私を恨む感情もまた、ただの電気信号でしかない。
Hatano kept talking. Sunny tried to force herself to calm down. Calm down.
お前の言葉なんか無効だ。
あまり感情的な行動をとるな。でなければ、お前は矛盾する。その言葉を受け取ってはいけない。精神攻撃だ。判断を中止するんだ。
話は終わりだ。
Senna went to raise her D-sword, but let me get information first. But ever so slightly before she could, Hatano suddenly stood up. Kozue was watching them nervously. She thought about trying to stop them, but her foot hurt too much for her to move. She wasn't sad, but in her heart she was sobbing. Hatano walked towards her with broad strides. Senna was slow to react, so she changed her stance to strike him when he got close. But when she went to move, she slipped on some loose stones. Ah, damn it! She lost her balance. Her uncertainty was showing in her movements. The sharpness had disappeared from her demeanor. She was afraid. Hating her father was how she kept herself from spiraling out of control. But now that she was face to face with him, she was afraid of confronting him. She didn't know why. She was just sure that what he'd said just a moment ago was the cause. Hatano was running at her with incredible speed. Oh, he's gonna hug her. She fell backwards. As she did, she swung her D-sword upward. The blade had no weight, and so no center of gravity. Ooh. It first cut through the tile on the platform floor, then it sliced through his shoulder. The cut was clean, like a hot knife through butter. Senna was pushed backwards by her father's hand. Red blood spilled from his wound. There was a look of relief in his eyes. Senna bit her lip. It's just as something struck him in the chest. It passed through his body from behind before whizzing by Senna's cheek. Did something else attack her? Something struck him in the chest. Blood poured not from his shoulder, but from his chest as well. The crimson liquid spurting from the wound splashed onto Senna's face. Oh, God. A bullet? Senna had fallen flat on her back. She looked up quickly and tried to find the man who fired the gun. Oh, it's this motherfucker. Oh, of course, I should have figured it out when it said gun. The man was standing in the gap between the Shinsen Station tunnel and the tunnel that led to Shibuya. That railroad crossing was the one place where you'd see the sky. He had a gun in his hand. Senna's father fell down next to her. His chest was already covered in blood. Had he protected me? Of all people? Senna looked in disbelief at the blood spreading across his station's... Wait, why did... Why did it say protected me? Because suddenly we're in the perspective of Senna, but now we're also in third person. Senna looked in disbelief at the blood spreading across the station's floor tiles. Her father whispered with his dying breaths. The bullet had been aimed at Senna, and Hatano had saved her. She'd been trying to kill her father, but instead he saved her life. Oh, that's why he was going so fast. Senna's grip on the blade tightened. A strange noise was echoing across the platform. Senna instantly realized that it was being caused by Noah too. How long had it been there? She felt infuriated. Infuriated at the man with the gun who interrupted her after she finally found her father. As she stood up and looked at him. Bam! Oh, fuck. No, you can't do that. You're bringing the baby back to life again? A baby's cry suddenly echoed across the dark platform. Senna suddenly felt something different in her hand. For some reason, instead of a sword, she was holding the rotten, desiccated corpse of a baby. She threw it away, but then she realized it was her own sister who she'd just seen one time. Senna began to feel uncertain once more. She couldn't take her eyes off of it. She couldn't forgive herself for throwing away her little sister, for finding her appearance disgusting. It had been the same way last time, when she had been forced to witness her mother's death, when she had seen her mother go insane and die. When she seen that, it wasn't just sorrow or fear that she felt. The thing she felt the most was disgust. That feeling had lingered in her heart as a sense of guilt, and she had been averting her eyes from it through an act of hating her father. Even if her mind knew that this was an illusion, the feelings she had locked away inside her mind had awakened and she was paralyzed by them. Crap. And it wasn't just Senna, Kozue was the same. She saw a huge mirror appear in front of her, and her own reflection, weeping blood from its leg, was asking her a question. Oh my god, that transition. Kozue was frozen in terror. Huge tears rolled down her face. The wound she wanted to forget, the past she didn't want to remember. Rotted tears were pouring up from her heart. She wanted to run away. She wanted to look away, so she wouldn't have to see the mirror. But her body wouldn't move the way she wanted. The girl in the reflection wasn't crying at all.
お前は誰、お前は誰、お前は誰、
I
お
wanna
前
skip
は誰、
that.
お前は誰、お前は誰、私は誰、私は誰、私は誰、私は誰、私は誰、
Struggling Kozue.
私は誰、私は誰、私は誰、私は誰、
Is that the thing when like too many thoughts kind of cloud you at once? A name of a psychological concept where a person can see things but no longer identify what they are. After the human brain receives visual information about an object, it needs to add in context such as past experiences, the surrounding environment, or known facts in order to determine that object's identity. For instance, in reading this paragraph, you've seen the letter A on the page many times, and your brain has unconsciously identified it as the first letter of the alphabet. However, if for some reason that process of identification were to fail, you see the letter A but no longer be capable of understanding what it is. In this case, it would simply look like a meaningless shape. This failure of identification is referred to as Gestalt, from the German word Gestalt, or shape. Oh, okay. So your brain just fails to comprehend something. Just like when she had lost the power to speak, just like when her mind had broken. The person in the mirror, the one asking the questions, ceased to look like her. She couldn't be sure of the sound of her voice. She couldn't be sure of her way her hair looked. She couldn't be sure of the shape of her nose. She couldn't be sure of the color of her eyes. She couldn't be sure of the thickness of her lips. She couldn't be sure of her appearance. She couldn't be sure of her own face.
私は誰？
Alright, everyone's got trauma. Gotcha.
君はコ
Oh,
ズピーだよ。
oh, snap! To the rescue! The vision of herself in the mirrors, which had threatened to split into countless fragments, was frozen in place by the sudden voice.
私はコズピー。私はコズピー。
Wow, so this nickname that she made for herself ended up being the identity that she can cling on to because Kozue Orihara was too vague for her. Her identity solidified once more. Kozue came back to her senses. The huge mirror in front of her shattered. Kozue searched for the voice of the one who'd saved her, and there, in the corridor leading to the turnstiles, she saw him. She screamed his name with the voices she thought she'd lost forever, her real voice. Oh, finally she speaks. Kosubi yelled with her real voice, not the one from inside her mind. I realized this was the first time I'd actually heard her speak. It was thanks to Kosubi that I was able to get this far. I'd heard her screams for help all the way from the police box at Dogenzaka Hill. Oh, nice! I followed the voice and found the two of them. Senna and Kosubi, trembling at delusions I couldn't see. Senna and Kosubi, trembling at delusions I couldn't see, and Hatano, lying on the ground covered in blood. I finally found him, and it was too late. Could he look into his memories?
こいつはラッキーっすね。
I get to kill 3 kids! Haha! A man was standing near the railway crossing, holding a gun. He was spinning it with his fingers like some kind of old West gunman. This man was wearing a suit, but he also had a backpack on too. The machine inside was making an awful noise. Mamoru Suwa, the detective assigned to the Section 1 of the Metropolitan Police. I'd met him before. And I knew what he'd done.
もともとは目障りな畑の親子を処分しに来たんすけどね。西条くん、君が自分から火に飛び込んできてくれて感謝感激っす。君を見かけたら捕まえろってことになってるんすよ。
誰に？
内緒っす。
We already know. He had a grin on his face. The way he smiled reminded me of his Bond. Oh, wait, it reminded me of Bond, his partner. I thought it said his Bond. I'm like, ooh, it's going that direction now. But the difference was this. Bond's smile was an act, either to make someone let their guard down or just to piss them off. But Sua's sly grin was a reflection of who he really was.
あんたはノロセの居場所を知ってる？
西条くんさ。
Sua shook his head and sighed.
口の利き方に気をつけてほしいっすね。自分の方が年上っすよ。
バン
Yeah.
っていう人を殺したのは
Didn't show him respect.
あんただ。
だから？
刑事のくせに人を殺すなんて。
君には言われたくないっす。
I clenched my D-sword tighter.
あんたみたいなやつに敬語を使う義理なんてないよ。
You know, now I think about it, I kind of wish we got more clarification about the crucifixion because I don't really understand how it happened. Rimi said it was a mix or like an overlap of 4 people's delusions. It was probably the killers, it was Shogun's, it was Rimi's, and it was Takumi's. But how did that work? We didn't actually get it explained completely. So I wonder if we'll get answered, like that answered. And we're getting the Hatano thing answered as well as the Suwa thing answered right now. The Genichi Narose thing will probably be answered soon as well.
そんな舐めた口聞いていいんすか?
Oh, look at that face. I could just kill you right here. Even from this distance, I could see it clearly, the way the smile disappeared from his face. And then, without taking a step from where he was, he waved the hand that wasn't holding the gun.
Takumi-san,
An impact, pain, a sudden sensation. I looked in surprise at my shoulder and saw a cross-shaped object I recognized sticking out of it. Oh. Oh. Okay, so he and Hazuki were working together. It wasn't one New Gen murderer, it was murderers. And he was responsible for the crucifixion. No, it wasn't a cross, it was a stake. A cross-shaped stake used in the crucified murder. It was so fast, I hadn't even seen it hit me. In the darkness of the station, I hadn't even realized it was coming at me. Suwa had thrown it, and from that distance, with perfect accuracy. I tried touching it. It felt cold and smooth. Was it delusion? Or real? The pain was getting worse. The strength was draining from my hands. I couldn't hold my D-sword anymore. Again, okay. Suwa spoke in a cold voice that belied his anger. Oh God. Oh man. So Suwa was responsible for the crucified, while Hazuki was responsible for a lot of the other ones, at the very least the baby one. But Hazuki was the one who drew the image of the crucified before, so... So I guess they had to be working together, or otherwise it wouldn't just be one, you know... It wouldn't really make sense otherwise, because he said it just now, he was like, I want to show you the crucifixion again, so he's the one who did it. Alright. Well, I think this might be kind of a dick move, because, you know, we're getting into the action, but I think I'm gonna stop here for today. We went through a lot of stuff dealing with the aftermath of the earthquake, and we're getting answers for, well, I literally brought up the crucifixion murder. I keep calling it crucifixion, but whatever. I literally brought it up, like, 2 minutes before he admitted or got confirmed that he was the one who did it. Alright, I'm glad that they answered that. But yeah, we'll engage with this fight next time. And until then, I will be seeing you. See ya!